Let me say something that will immediately make half the room uncomfortable. For nearly 30 years of my adult life, I did not own a house, not because I couldn't afford one, not because I didn't value stability, but because I refused to confuse comfort with intelligence. Most people buy a house because society tells them it's the adult thing to do. I didn't. And that single decision forced me to think clearly, rationally, and independently, which, by the way, is the first requirement for getting rich and staying rich. The biggest financial mistakes are not made in moments of panic. They're made in moments of social pressure. Most people never stop to ask why they are buying a house. They assume it is the intelligent move simply because it is the familiar move. Society rewards conformity, not thinking. When enough people repeat the same behavior for long enough, it becomes tradition, and tradition is often mistaken for wisdom. That is a dangerous substitution. Intelligence requires analysis. Tradition requires obedience. One builds wealth. The other builds comfort. If everyone around you agrees with your financial decision, there is a high probability you did not think deeply enough about it. The crowd rarely runs the numbers. The crowd responds to fear of missing out, fear of judgment, and fear of being different. Those are emotional incentives, buying not rational ones. Buying a house has become a cultural rite of passage. It signals adulthood, stability, and success, but signals are not substance. When people confuse social approval with sound judgment, they often lock themselves into decades, long obligations without understanding the trade-offs. They do not ask what else that capital could have done. They do not calculate opportunity cost. They only see what everyone else sees and assume safety lies in similarity. Copying the crowd feels safe, but safety built on imitation is fragile. The moment conditions change, the crowd panics together. Independent thinkers adapt. Tradition does not protect you from bad math. Popularity does not reduce risk. If anything, it concentrates it. Real intelligence is the ability to step back and say, this works for many people, but does it work for me? Now, under these conditions, that question alone separates rational adults from financially obedient ones. The people who build durable wealth are not rebels for attention. They are skeptics by discipline. They understand that long-term success rarely comes from doing what is expected, but from doing what is calculated. Calling a house an investment makes people feel intelligent, but feeling intelligent is not the same as being correct. An investment, by definition, is expected to produce cash or increase productive capacity. A primary residence does neither. It consumes capital, requires constant maintenance, and generates expenses that never stop. The label, investment, is comforting, but comfort has never been a reliable financial strategy. If an asset costs you money every month and pays you nothing, you should be very cautious before calling it wealth. Mortgage interest, property taxes, insurance, repairs, and time all flow in one direction, out. Most people never total these costs over decades. They focus on the potential resale price and ignore the silent drain that happens every year. Price appreciation does not equal intelligence. Rising markets can make ordinary decisions look brilliant. When home prices rise, people credit themselves instead of the cycle. When prices stagnate, reality arrives. And an asset that depends entirely on favorable conditions to appear successful is not a robust investment. There is also the matter of opportunity cost, which is rarely discussed because it is invisible. Capital tied up in a house cannot be deployed elsewhere. It cannot chase better returns, build businesses, or compound freely. Once locked in, it becomes illiquid, inflexible, and emotionally protected. People defend bad economics because admitting the truth would bruise their identity. An investment should give you options, obligations. A home may provide comfort and stability, and those can be valuable. But value does not automatically mean investment. When you blur that distinction, you make emotional decisions with financial consequences. Clear thinkers separate lifestyle choices from wealth-building tools, and that clarity alone puts them ahead of most people. Flexibility rarely looks impressive, but it consistently proves valuable. Most people underestimate it because it cannot be photographed, posted, or immediately praised. Yet flexibility is what allows intelligent people to move toward opportunity instead of being trapped by prior decisions. When your financial life is rigid, even good opportunities become stressful. When it is flexible, change becomes an advantage rather than a threat. Wealth is not only what you own, it is what you can do when circumstances change. A person with low fixed obligations can relocate, pivot careers, invest aggressively, or wait patiently. A person locked into heavy term commitments must optimize every decision just to stay afloat. That is not freedom. That is maintenance. Optionality compounds quietly. Renting, for example, allows capital to remain liquid and decisions to remain reversible. Reversibility is power. When a choice can be changed without destroying your financial structure, you think more clearly and act more rationally. Permanent commitments create emotional pressure, and emotional pressure leads to poor judgment. Many people are not risk takers, they are risk prisoners. They cannot take advantage of opportunity because their monthly obligations dictate their behavior. They stay in jobs they dislike, cities they have outgrown, and routines that no longer serve them. Not because it is optimal, because it is necessary. Flexibility also protects against error. All long-term plans contain mistakes. The difference is whether those mistakes are survivable. A flexible structure absorbs shocks. A rigid one breaks. The ability to pause, reassess, and redirect is an enormous competitive advantage over decades. People often chase certainty, believing it will calm their anxiety. In reality, flexibility reduces anxiety more effectively than false certainty ever could. When you know you can adapt, you do not need perfect forecasts. You only need the patience to wait and the freedom to move when the odds shift in your favor. Many people believe debt creates discipline, but that belief confuses pressure with character. Pressure can force short-term behavior, yet it does not build the habits required for long-term success. If discipline only exists when a bill is due, it is not discipline at all. It is fear temporarily wearing a productive mask. Any system that collapses the moment pressure is removed was never strong to begin with. True discipline operates without external threats. It shows up in how money is managed when there is no deadline, no penalty, and no one watching. Relying on debt to enforce behavior is an admission that self-control has not yet been developed. Mortgages and large obligations are often justified as forced savings. In reality, they are forced payments. Saving builds ownership and choice. Payments build obligation and anxiety. The difference matters. When people mistake obligation for discipline, they celebrate survival as progress and call endurance a strategy. Leverage magnifies whatever behavior already exists. If habits are weak, debt amplifies weakness. If judgment is flawed, debt accelerates the damage. Debt does not correct behavior, it exposes it. That is why the same mortgage can feel manageable to one person and suffocating to another. Discipline must precede leverage, not follow it. Strong habits allow debt to be used deliberately and conservatively, if at all. Weak habits turn debt into a permanent source of stress that dictates every future decision. People then organize their lives around payments instead of opportunity. Financial independence is not built by locking yourself into obligations and hoping maturity appears. It is built by learning to control spending, delay gratification, and allocate capital wisely long before leverage enters the picture. Character creates stability. Debt only tests whether it was already there. Most people aim to look smart instead of avoiding being foolish, and that single reversal explains a lifetime of financial disappointment. Chasing brilliance is exciting. It feeds ego. Avoiding stupidity is quiet, disciplined, and far more effective. Over long periods, the damage from a few bad decisions outweighs the benefit of dozens of good ones. You do not need extraordinary intelligence to succeed financially, but you do need extraordinary caution. Large mistakes are rarely subtle. They are usually driven by emotion, leverage, and overconfidence. The irony is that people step into them willingly, convinced they are being bold rather than careless. Stupidity often arrives disguised as confidence. It sounds like certainty about the future. Stories about guaranteed outcomes and decisions made to prove something rather than to improve something. Financial disasters rarely come from ignorance alone. They come from ignoring obvious risks because acknowledging them would slow progress or challenge identity. The easiest way to win is to refuse to lose in obvious ways. Excessive debt, emotional purchases, speculative investments, and decisions made under social pressure all fall into this category. They are not clever risks. They are predictable traps. Avoiding stupidity requires humility. It means admitting you cannot forecast markets perfectly, that you are influenced by emotion, and that incentives shape behavior more than intelligence. This humility leads to margin of safety, patience, and restraint. Those qualities lack drama, but they compound relentlessly. Over decades, financial success often looks unimpressive from the outside. No sudden breakthroughs, no heroic bets, just consistent avoidance of errors that permanently impair capital. People who master this do not feel smarter in the moment. They simply stay in the game long enough for compounding to do the heavy lifting. Most people underestimate the power of quiet progress because it lacks immediate validation. Flashy decisions attract attention, applause, and reassurance. Quiet decisions attract none of those things. They operate in the background unnoticed, while time does the work. Yet over decades, the gap between the two becomes impossible to ignore. If your financial choices need an audience, they are probably designed for approval, not results. True compounding is boring. It does not announce itself. It shows up slowly, then all at once, after most people have already lost patience. Ego is expensive. It pushes people toward visible upgrades, public milestones, and symbols of success that depreciate or stagnate. Balance sheets rarely impress dinner guests, so they are neglected. Instead, resources are diverted toward things that signal achievement rather than build it. The tragedy is not the purchase itself, but the unseen alternative that never had the chance to grow. Time rewards consistency, not excitement. Money placed into productive assets and left alone does not look heroic. There are no dramatic stories attached to it. But each year, it quietly earns on what it already earned before. Meanwhile, flashy decisions often require constant attention, defense, and explanation. Quiet decisions also reduce error. When ego is removed, decisions become cleaner and more rational. There is less need to justify outcomes or double down on mistakes. Progress becomes a private agreement between you and the math. Compounding favors those who can wait without boredom and act without applause. While others seek visible progress, quiet builders accumulate momentum. Eventually, the results speak for themselves, even though they were never designed to.